The hand came down on her shoulder without warning. Not a tap, not a touch. A press, slow, deliberate, downward. "Get on your knees," the woman said. The whole restaurant went quiet. This was a powerful woman. The kind whose name alone closes businesses. The kind who has spent her whole life pressing people down and calling it power. And right now she had her hands on a black waitress's shoulder, telling her to kneel. She had apologized. It wasn't enough. She was at the wrong place at the wrong time. The waitress did not move. The woman pressed harder. Everyone in that room was watching. Nobody said a word. Nobody stood up. Nobody dared. But there was one thing that woman did not know either. One thing nobody had told her before she walked through that door and made this decision. She had no idea who owned this restaurant. And somewhere behind her, he walked in. Before we go any further, if you are new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. This channel is built for stories exactly like this one. Like the video, and drop a comment below. Tell me what you think that man is about to do the moment he walks through that door. I want to read every single one. Now, let's get into it. She was a Ugandan student in Seoul with a cracked phone screen and 6 years of savings. Her name was Brenda, 26 years old, from Kampala. She had come to this city with one goal, a master's degree at one of the most prestigious universities in South Korea. No scholarship, no backup plan, just the kind of discipline that most people admire from a distance and never actually practice. But Seoul was expensive, and the numbers were getting tight faster than she had expected. So she walked 2 blocks from her dormitory, saw a handwritten notice pinned to the wall of a convenience store, and showed up the next morning at a restaurant called Yun's. The place was small, quiet, tucked into a narrow street between a dry cleaner and a flower shop that was always half closed. But from the moment she stepped through the door, something pulled her in. The warmth of the light, low and amber. The smell of something slow cooking in the kitchen, deep and rich with fermented paste and ginger. The dark wooden floors, clean and smooth under her shoes. The feeling of a place that didn't need to impress you because it already knew what it was. She met Chef Park at the counter, a small man in his 60s, slow hands, a face that had aged into kindness. He looked at her application for 4 seconds, then he looked at her. "You'll get looks," he said. "I've been getting looks my whole life," she said. "It's never been the part that stopped me." He hired her on the spot. She learned the menu in 2 days. She learned enough Korean to greet regulars by the end of the first week. She moved through the restaurant with the quiet confidence of someone who had learned early that caring for people wasn't a performance, it was just who she was. Every table got her full attention. Every person who sat down walked away feeling something they couldn't quite name. That was Brenda. But there was one table she was told never to touch. Table 7, corner booth, against the back wall. She noticed it on her first day. It was always set perfectly. Fresh flowers, white linen, the good glassware reserved for important guests. And it was always empty. Every single service. Set beautifully. Never used. She asked Chef Park about it once. He didn't look at her. He just said, "That table is not ours to seat. Understood?" She understood. She didn't push, but she watched the table. She noticed that Chef Park was the one who changed the flowers every morning, before anyone else arrived, like a private obligation. Like something that had to be done whether anyone was watching or not. She wondered who the flowers were for. 3 weeks later, she found out. He walked in on a Tuesday afternoon in October. The restaurant was half full, the tail end of the lunch crowd, low conversation, the soft clink of chopsticks on ceramic, everything ordinary. And then the room changed. Not dramatically, not with gasps or turned heads. It was quieter than that. The way air pressure drops before a storm, barely noticeable. But your body knows, conversations got softer. People didn't look up, but they became careful. Something moved through the room like a slow current. He was tall, dark coat. His face gave nothing away, not cold, just completely closed. Like something locked so long ago that the lock had become the face. He didn't glance at the menu boards. He didn't look at any of the other tables. He walked directly to table 7, sat down, and folded his coat over the seat beside him with the efficiency of someone repeating a motion they've repeated many times. Chef Park came out of the kitchen in 30 seconds. She had never seen the old man move that fast. He spoke to the man in low Korean, too quiet for her to catch. The man nodded once. Chef Park went back. For the next 20 minutes, the man did one thing. He looked at a photograph on the wall above table 7. A black and white photograph of a woman Korean, elegant, maybe late 50s when it was taken. She was laughing, not a polite smile. A real laugh, full and abandoned, with her whole face. Her hair was pinned up with what looked like a chopstick. Her eyes were almost closed from the joy of it. She looked like someone caught at the peak of the best moment of her life. The man looked at that photograph the way you look at something you have memorized and still cannot stop returning to. His expression was unlike anything Brenda had seen before. Past, sadness. The feeling that lives on the other side of grief, once you've gone all the way through it and discovered that what's waiting there is not peace, just a very specific, very permanent quiet. He ate when Chef Park brought the food. He left cash on the table far more than the bill. And he walked out without looking at anything except the photograph one final time at the door. Brenda stood at the service station and watched him leave. "Chef Park," she said. Who is that man?" Chef Park folded the bills without looking up. "Someone who comes once a year." "Why once a year?" "Today is her birthday." He glanced at the photograph. The glance of someone who has looked at something so many times, they no longer need to actually see it. "He comes every year on her birthday. Has done since she died." He walked back toward the kitchen. "Don't ask him questions," he said, without turning. "He doesn't answer them." But here is what Chef Park did not say. And here is what Brenda had absolutely no way of knowing yet, that man's return was not done. That something in the restaurant had shifted the moment he sat down. That what she was about to see, again and again, in the weeks that followed, would turn out to be the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. 3 weeks later, he came back. Wrong Tuesday. Not the birthday. No visible reason. Chef Park was in the back receiving a delivery. The man had been at table 7 for 14 minutes with no one approaching him. And Brenda Nakado was constitutionally incapable of letting that stand. She picked up her notepad. She walked to table 7. She stopped in front of him. "Hope you're good," she said. He looked at her. Not through her. At her. Like she was a variable he hadn't seen coming and was now reassessing. His eyes were dark and very still. He said nothing. Not a single word. She waited 3 seconds. Then she nodded pleasantly. "I'll come back when you're ready." She turned. She walked back. She didn't feel dismissed. She felt something stranger. Like she had taken a test she hadn't known was being given and had, somehow, without studying, given exactly the right answer. The following Tuesday, he came back. She brought him food without being asked. Chef Park had told her quietly what the man usually ordered: black rice, braised short rib, and a small bowl of doenjang jigai. She set it down carefully and was stepping back when he spoke. "Why do you care?" Not a question, a challenge, flat and measured. Like someone who had decided to finally ask something they'd been holding. She turned back. "Excuse me?" "Last time." He looked at the food, not at her. "You asked if I was good. Why do you care?" She thought about it. Genuinely. Because it deserved a genuine answer. "Everyone who walks into this restaurant," she said, "is worthy to care for." He looked up. Something moved in his face, small and deep, like a door opening 1 centimeter, just enough to see that there was light somewhere on the other side. He looked back at his food. He nodded. He ate. And then he came back the following Tuesday, and the one after. Then twice in November. By December, he was coming almost every week, sometimes twice. Always table 7. Always the same order. Always the same look at the photograph. He started talking to her. Not long speeches, not declarations, just small things. Questions about where she was from. And then listening the real kind, with his whole attention. Like her words were something worth keeping. She told him about Kampala. The noise of the Owino market on a Saturday morning. The sound of rain on iron rooftops. the particular gold of early morning light on Lake Victoria, the kind of light she had never been able to describe in any language but knew exactly in her body. He listened without interrupting, without checking his phone. She couldn't remember the last time someone had listened to her like that. She didn't push him for anything in return. She'd read him well enough to know that his silence was not a wall. It was time. He was deciding, and she wasn't going to rush it. She learned his name in the 4th week. "I'm Brenda," she said one evening, extending her hand directly, without apology. He looked at her hand. Then he shook it. Brief. Firm. "Bake Sue," he said. She said it back. Slightly wrong. He corrected her one word, one quiet adjustment, the gentlest correction she'd ever received. "Better," he said. And something in that single word landed in her chest, in a way she didn't name yet. She stored it. For later. But here is what Brenda still didn't know. And this is the part that changes everything. While she was learning his name, while she was noticing the photograph and the flowers and the way the room quietly adjusted when he walked in the world outside that restaurant, knew him as something else entirely. His father, Choi Mun-hyuk, had spent 30 years building an empire. Not the visible kind. The kind that exists in the spaces between official things, in Inchinport. In back rooms of buildings with ordinary names on their doors. In the specific kind of power that doesn't announce itself, you don't see it. You see what it does to everything around it. Like gravity. Baek Soo had spent 11 years trying to leave that name behind, trying to be no one. It had not worked. His father had gotten sick 8 months ago, died in February, and in the quiet, unremarkable way that power moves in certain circles, the name had passed. No announcement, no ceremony. Just the understanding, in all the places that needed to understand it, that there was a new Choi. He didn't want it. He had never wanted any of it. But his mother was gone. The people who had worked for his father had families. And the name was his, whether he claimed it or not. So he carried it. Quietly, with the same controlled stillness he carried everything else. And he came to his mother's restaurant on Tuesday afternoons and ate the food she used to make on Sundays, and talked slowly and carefully to a Ugandan woman who never asked him anything he wasn't ready to answer. He told Brenda about his mother one evening in November. Not as a prepared thing. In the middle of something else, he simply said it. "It's my mother's restaurant." Brenda set down the glass she was polishing. "Oh," she said. "She built it herself, named it after herself." He looked at the photograph. "She would have liked you." Brenda looked at the photograph. The laughing woman, the chopstick in her hair, 4 years and a frame, and the joy in her face hadn't faded one bit. "I would have liked her too," Brenda said quietly. "The line on the sign outside, 'Everyone is worthy,' that was hers?" "She meant it," he said. "She meant everything she said. A silence. The full kind. Not empty." "I can tell," Brenda said. He looked at her then, and the door in his face opened further than it ever had. Not with words, just with the simple fact of his looking, and not looking away. Neither of them said anything else that evening. They didn't need to. And then came the Friday. Everything broke open. She walked in at 12:15. Heels first. The sharp, deliberate sound of them on the wooden floor. A click, a rhythm. The sound of someone who expects the room to notice her arrival and has never once been wrong about it. She wore a cream blazer, cut precisely, the kind that announces its price tag through its shape alone. Her bag hung from one arm without effort. Her face was composed the way a face is composed when composure has become the default, not a mask, just the permanent setting. 2 younger women came in behind her. Assistants, or friends who had learned to behave like assistants. They sat when she sat. They looked where she looked. Brenda took their orders without incident. She knew the texture of difficult people. She'd been reading it since she was a child. She moved through the table with her usual ease and went to the kitchen and thought about her thesis and the market near Hongdae she'd visited last weekend. She didn't think about anything going wrong. Then she came back across the restaurant with the tray. 3 dishes, balanced. She had done this hundreds of times. The busboy came out of the kitchen door half a second too fast. His shoulder caught the edge of the tray, just barely. But the tray was fully loaded, and the physics were unforgiving. One bowl, the doenjang jigai, dark and fragrant and still hot, slid off the edge. It hit the table. The bowl held, but the soup went forward, and most of it landed on the empty chair beside the woman, and one splash the size of an open hand, no bigger, caught the sleeve of the cream blazer. Brenda set the remaining dishes down in one single motion. She turned immediately. She took the clean cloth from her apron. "I'm so sorry," she said, in Korean, clear and sincere. "Please let me help. The restaurant will cover the cleaning, or the full replacement. Don't touch me." Quiet. Very quiet. The most dangerous voices are always the quiet ones. The loud ones are still deciding. The quiet ones have already decided. Brenda stopped. Cloth still in her hand. "I'll speak to my manager right now," she said. "We'll take complete care of your blazer. I'm so—" "Do you know," the woman said, setting her chopsticks down with surgical precision, "who I am?" Brenda didn't answer. She recognized the trap. To answer was to accept that the answer mattered to how she was about to be treated. She held her silence. "I am the wife of Chairman Shin Dae-won." The woman's voice was a verdict being read out. "I head the Shin Foundation. I have hosted the president of this country in my home." She paused. "And you have spilled soup on me." "It was an accident," Brenda said, level, clear, unshaken. The woman turned to her companions. She smiled, the kind designed to be witnessed. Then she looked back. "Take off your apron," she said. "Put it on the chair, get on your knees, and apologize to me the way someone like you apologizes to someone like me." The restaurant went completely silent. Not warm silence, cold silence. The kind where people are watching something happen and calculating what it would cost them to intervene. The overhead light buzzed once. Cutlery rested against plates. Every mouth was closed. The kitchen felt far away. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody stood. Brenda held the cloth. She did not get on her knees. The woman saw this. Her eyes narrowed. She stood up slowly, not tall, but standing as if height was irrelevant. Her hand came out. It found Brenda's shoulder, and it pressed, slowly, steadily, downward. Not a grip, not a grab, a press. The way you press a button. The way you operate something you believe exists to be operated. I said, "Neil, here is what that woman did not know." She had walked in and read the room. She had calculated the power inside it. She had decided she understood everything. She had missed one thing. The one thing that mattered. The door opened. The small bell above it hung there by the previous owner because she liked the sound of people arriving rang once, clear and small in the silence. The woman didn't turn around. She wasn't finished yet. She should have turned around. Baek-soo stood in the entrance. He wasn't supposed to be there on a Friday. He had rules about this place. But he had been driving past it, and his car had turned without being asked. And here he was. His eyes moved through the room in 2 seconds flat. He saw the spilled tray, the soup, Chef Park white-faced at the kitchen doorway. The 2 women looking at the table, the woman in the cream blazer, standing. And then he saw her hand on Brenda's shoulder, pressing down. His face did not change. But something came into his eyes that made the already cold room go colder. He walked forward, his own pace, unhurried. The pace of a man who has never once needed to rush, because everything in a room moves according to him, not the other way around. The woman heard footsteps. She turned. She looked at him the way she had looked at everything here, the quick, dismissive assessment of someone certain of their category. A man in a coat, an interruption. "This doesn't concern you," she said. Baek-soo stopped 3 feet from her. He looked at Brenda first. "Just 1 second. Just long enough to say without any words you're done with this. I have it now." Then he looked at the woman in the cream blazer. "Get your hand off my employee," he said. 7 words, flat as a table. No rise in his voice, no visible anger. Just the complete and absolute absence of any question in it. A fact about how things were going to be. Gravity, being explained to someone who'd been ignoring it. Her hand came off Brenda's shoulder before she had finished deciding to move it. She looked at him again, this time differently. Something had shifted in her math, and she hadn't found the error yet. "And who?" she said, slower. "Are you?" "I am the owner of this restaurant," he said. Silence. A very specific kind. The kind that falls when a room suddenly understands what room it has been sitting in this whole time. She kept his gaze. She was practiced. She did not look away easily. "I don't know your name," she said. "I know," he said. "That is the only reason you are still standing." He walked to the desk near the kitchen. He made a call, 40 seconds, voice too low for anyone in the dining room to hear. When he came back, he went to table 7. He sat down. He looked at his mother's photograph. He did not watch the woman. He didn't need to. 6 minutes later, her phone rang. She looked at the screen. And in the 2 unguarded seconds before she could compose herself in that small window between seeing and reacting, something happened to her face. Fear, real fear. The kind that doesn't come from surprise. The kind that comes from recognition. From suddenly understanding that the room you walked into is not the room you thought it was. She answered. She listened for a long time. She said 2 words. She hung up. She didn't look at Beck Sue. She didn't look at Brenda. She picked up her bag. She walked out. Her companions followed immediately. No goodbyes, no collected belongings. They moved like people who had been told it was time to leave and understood, completely, that it was. The bell rang once. Then, nothing. Then, slowly, like a breath finally let go after being held far too long, the restaurant came back to itself, cutlery on plates. A quiet conversation resuming somewhere in the middle of the room. The kitchen finding its rhythm again. She had thought she was walking into a restaurant. She had walked into his mother's house. And nobody walks into a man's mother's house and presses people toward the floor, not without answering for it. Not without finding out what answering looks like. Chef Park began quietly clearing the mess. Brenda stood still for a moment, just a moment. Her hand finally released around the cloth. She tucked it into her apron pocket. She smoothed the fabric. She straightened her back. Then she walked to table 7. "Thank you," she said. "Sit down," he said. "I'm still working." "Chef Park can manage 5 minutes. Sit down." She looked at Chef Park. The old man gave her the smallest nod, barely a movement. She sat. Beck Sue was looking at his hands on the table, not at her, at his hands. The hands of someone who has just made a series of decisions very quickly and is now living in the quiet that follows. "She won't come back here," he said. "You didn't need to." "She won't come back here, and she won't cause you any problems." He looked up at her. "This I can do. This I will do." Brenda looked at him for a long moment. "Who are you?" she said. The question had been waiting for months. She asked it the way she asked everything directly, without apology, like an open hand, rather than a closed fist. He looked at the photograph of his mother. He looked at it for a while. Then he said, "Someone who should have come back to his mother's restaurant a long time ago." Not a complete answer, more than an answer. The most honest thing he'd said to her yet. She nodded. She stood. She smoothed her apron. "Your food is getting cold," she said. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. The intention of a smile. The beginning of one. "Thank you, Brenda," he said. That night, after the last patron left, Chef Park told her. He sat across from her at the prep counter, 2 cups of barley tea between them, the kitchen dark, the only light coming from the single lamp over the counter and the glow through the serving window from the lamp above table 7. Chef Park always left that one on. Every night, without fail, he told her slowly. She listened the way she listened to important things, completely still, not filling the silences, letting each sentence land before the next one arrived. He told her the name first. Choi Baek-soo, the son of Choi Mun-hyuk. He told her what that name meant, not loudly, quietly the way you explain something that is everywhere and doesn't need volume to make its point. The empire his father had built over 30 years, the weight of it in certain rooms of this city. The way that weight had passed, 8 months ago, to a man who had spent 11 years refusing it. He told her about Yun Jia, how she had built this restaurant with her own money and her own vision, how she had insisted to her last day, that this place would carry none of the shadows from the rest of her world. Everyone worthy, her rule, her sign, her house. He told her how she had died, a cancer that moved fast and didn't negotiate, 4 years ago, 61 years old. And every year since, her son had come on her birthday and sat and looked at her photograph and carried the grief alone. Brenda looked at the photograph through the serving window. The laughing woman, the chopstick, the joy that couldn't be contained by the frame. He comes every week now, she said. Yes, Chef Park said. She looked at her tea. There's something else, Chef Park said. His voice shifted, quieter. The way a voice gets quiet when what's coming is heavier than everything that came before it. Something Baek-soo told me tonight. Before he left, he paused. About that woman. Brenda looked up. Chef Park told her about the trial. Yun Jia had been enrolled in a clinical trial at Severance Hospital. Immunotherapy. Not a last-ditch attempt, an actual treatment. Her oncologist had been cautiously optimistic. The early results had been encouraging. She had been responding. She had been getting better. And then she had been removed from the trial. The paperwork used careful language, eligibility adjustments, program realignment, the kind of language that is built specifically to make the reader stop asking questions. But underneath it was something else. A call that had been made. A board member who had been reached. A decision that had been processed through the Shin Foundation. Shin Dae-won, the chairman, the husband of the woman who had stood over Brenda with her hand pressing down, had a business dispute with Choi Mun-hyuk, an old territorial claim in Incheon Port. He had wanted leverage. He had found a pressure point. He had used it. Yun Jia had been removed from the only treatment that was working. 14 months later, she had died. And the email chain that had made it happen, the one that should have been deleted 4 years ago, the one that had survived in a drafts folder because someone had forgotten to clear it, had been copied to a personal account. Shin Ga-eun's personal account. She had known. She hadn't made the call. She hadn't been the one who picked up the phone. But she had read that email. She had said nothing. She had done nothing. And years later, she had walked into the restaurant named after that woman and pressed her hand onto the shoulder of a black girl who had done nothing wrong and said, "Kneel." Brenda sat very still. The tea had gone cold. The kitchen was dark. Outside, Seoul moved on with its noise and its indifference. Inside, the lamp over table 7 held its small circle of warm light, the way it did every night, the way it had done since the day Jia died. She knew, Brenda said. Yes, Chef Park said. And she walked in here. Yes. Brenda looked at the photograph one more time. Then she looked at her hands flat on the counter. What is Baek-soo going to do? She asked. Chef Park looked at her steadily. He's already doing it, he said. Here is what a man like Baek-soo does when he discovers something like this. He doesn't shout. He doesn't make threats. He doesn't stage anything for anyone to see. He goes very, very quiet. And in that quiet, things begin to happen. In places that can't be pointed at. In ways that can't be appealed. The kind of consequences that are worse than visible ones because they have no face to argue with. The Shin Foundation's financial records went to the right eyes. Through channels with no fingerprints, questions followed. Then, auditors. Then more questions, the kind that don't go away once they've been asked. The Shin family's port operations in Incheon started facing delays. Not obvious ones, not dramatic ones, just the grinding, relentless kind. Inspection after inspection. The slow accumulation of friction that destroys a business not in a single blow but through 1,000 small costs over time. An envelope arrived at an independent journalist's office. Inside, the email chain. The patient removal paperwork. A clean, factual timeline. The journalist asked questions publicly. The questions became a story. Then, 2 stories. Then 5. By the end of the second week, the Shin Foundation had suspended its board chair pending investigation. By the third week, Chairman Shin Dae-won had issued a statement about stepping back for personal reasons. By the 4th week, Shin Ga-eun had not been seen in public at all. She had thought she was the most powerful person in that restaurant. She had been the most exposed. She just hadn't known it yet. He told Brenda on a Thursday evening after closing. They sat at table 7. The lamp on, the restaurant dark around them. 2 cups of tea on the table Chef Park had started leaving them there without being asked, and neither of them had mentioned it. They both knew. Beksu told her everything, carefully, without embellishment, the trial, the email. What his mother's last 14 months had looked like, without the treatment that had been saving her. What the word removed had actually cost. When he finished, Brenda was quiet. She didn't cry. She looked at Gia's photograph for a long time. When she turned back, her eyes were clear and very steady. She walked in here, Brenda said. Into your mother's restaurant. And she put her hand on me like she had every right. She paused. And she let your mother die. Yes, he said. Is she going to be all right? He looked at her. He understood exactly what she was asking. Whether this had been proportionate? Whether anyone who didn't deserve it would be caught in it. Her husband's business won't recover, he said. She'll face investigations that take years to close. What she was publicly, financially, she will not be that again. He paused. I didn't touch her family. I didn't need to. She'll spend a long time answering for choices she made and choices she didn't make. Brenda looked at him for a moment. Then she nodded. Good, she said. One word. Clean and simple. Not said with pleasure. Said with the certainty of someone who understands that the world doesn't correct itself. That some things have to be answered by someone who has the capacity to answer them. The lamp hummed. Something settled in the kitchen. Beksu, she said. Yes, your mother built this place so there would be somewhere in the world without shadows. She put it in the sign. She put it in the rule. Brenda looked at him. And that woman walked in and tried to prove otherwise. He looked at her. And what moved through his face in that moment was not the almost smile, was not the 1 centimeter door. It was something fuller, something that had been making its way to the surface for months through all those layers of earned, careful distance, and had finally arrived. She walked into the wrong place, he said. Yes, Brenda said. She did. 3 days later, he asked her something he had never asked anyone. I would like to take you somewhere that isn't here, he said. She looked at him. Somewhere, like where? Somewhere you choose. She took out her notepad. She wrote an address. She tore the sheet off and placed it on the table between them. A market near Hongdae. Sunday at 2 o'clock. Come hungry, she said. And wear something you can actually walk in. He arrived exactly on time, which she had expected. He stood at the entrance in dark jeans and a gray coat, looking slightly like someone given directions to a foreign country who was absolutely committed to figuring it out. She was already inside, 20 minutes early, moving through the stalls, arguing cheerfully in broken Korean with a vendor about dried persimmons until they both laughed. She found him at the entrance and walked straight up to him. You look terrified, she said. I look fine, he said. You look like someone told you there was going to be a quiz. Something happened in his face. The almost smile, then past it. An actual smile, small, unpracticed. The kind that hasn't been used enough to know how to arrive quickly. The kind that is more convincing for being slow. She started walking. He fell into step beside her. They spent 3 hours in that market. She showed him how to move through it the way she moved through it. No plan, just attention. Following smell, following sound. Turning corners without knowing what was around them. She bought spiced nuts from a vendor who gave her extra because her Korean was bad but enthusiastic. She picked up a small handmade bowl and held it up to the light to look at the glaze, then set it back down. He walked beside her and watched the way she moved through the world. The same complete attention he brought to everything, but looser here, more open. Like a person who is, for the first time in a long while, not being anyone in particular. He talked about his mother. Really talked. How she had brought him to places like this when he was young. How she could find something extraordinary in any ordinary stall. A particular tea. A wooden toy she'd carry home in her coat pocket. How she had moved through the world believing that it was large and that the large parts were good. Brenda listened. She let him speak. She didn't fill his pauses. She let them be what they were, just space and time. and 2 people walking. She would have argued with that vendor for 20 minutes, he said, and won, and then felt guilty and given most of it back. Brenda laughed. Her real laugh, the one that came from somewhere central and didn't ask permission. He watched her laugh, and the way he looked at her was not the way he looked at the photograph. The photograph was memory, backward-facing. This was something else, something that moved toward the future, something with room in it. They ate at a street stall as the light went low, and gold rice cakes in paper cups, fish cakes on sticks, something sweet she had researched ahead of time, small plastic stools, the market loud around them, a child running between the stalls, motorbikes threading through the gaps. She told him about the first time she'd eaten Korean street food, 3 weeks after arriving in Seoul. She had pointed at something on a menu without knowing what it was. It had been so spicy she had cried at the table. He looked at her. "You cried?" "Tears streaming," she said. "And then I ordered a second one because I didn't want to look defeated." He was quiet for a moment. "My mother used to say," he said, "that the best way to understand a person was to see what they did when something was harder than they expected." What would she have said, Brenda asked, about someone who orders a second helping of something that made them cry? He looked at her. And what was in his face in that moment was not grief, not the almost smile, not the careful stillness he wore everywhere else in his life. It was something warmer and more certain than any of those things, something that had taken months to find the surface and had finally arrived. She would have said, he told her, that you should hold on to people like that. They're not easy to find. The city kept moving around them. Someone laughed 3 stalls over. A vendor called out. The evening light settled into everything, into the stalls, the steam rising from the food carts, the faces of people passing, the ordinary, beautiful noise of a city at the end of a good day. Brenda looked at him. Baeksu. Yes. I don't know what this is yet. No, he said. Neither do I. But I know it's something. Yes, he said. So do I. He didn't reach for her hand. She didn't reach for his. They sat on those small plastic stools and let the evening happen around them, and neither of them needed anything else from the moment. Some things don't need to be said. They only need to be felt. And the feeling was there, real and quiet and stronger than either of them knew what to do with yet. A week later, they were at table 7 after closing, the lamp on above them, the rest of the restaurant dark, 2 cups of tea on the table that Chef Park had started leaving every night now without being asked. Neither of them had mentioned it. They both knew what it meant. She put her hand on the table, open, just placed it there between them, not demanding anything, not performing anything, just there. He looked at her hand. Then he looked at her. He turned his palm over and held it. The lamp hummed its small, steady hum. The photograph of Gia hung on the wall above them, the laughing woman, the chopstick in her hair. The joy of someone fully inside the best possible second of a moment, laughing at something just outside the frame, caught before anything could take it from her. And the sign above the door, still in her handwriting, still exactly as she had written it the day she opened this place, and meant every single word of it. A place where everyone is worthy. She had meant it. She always had. And here, under her photograph, in her corner, at her table, the son she had loved, and the woman, he was slowly and certainly finding his way toward Sat, holding hands in the warm circle of a single lamp, while Seoul moved on outside, and the flowers in the vase were fresh because Chef Park had changed them that morning, the way he did every morning, the way he always would. Gia had built something real. It was still standing. If this story moved you, if you felt every moment of what Brenda carried and every word that Baeksu took his time to finally say, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop a comment below with the one moment in this story you will not forget. I read every single one. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next story.